Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're going to do a different kind of video today. I'm going to show you how to take one of these ESP8266 control boards and configure it from start to finish. So from out of the package from Amazon all the way to having the WLED software installed on it and ready to go. So we'll talk about how to get the hardware set up, how to initially configure the software, and then maybe look at a few of the optional settings. So once you get your ESP8266 out of the package, you're going to plug it into your computer with a micro USB cable. So micro USB is the one with the little rounded end. Essentially just take your board, plug that in. And if you have the appropriate drivers, this board is going to connect and talk to your computer. Now to see if it's talking properly, what you want to do is open up your device manager. In Windows, you can do that by hitting the Start menu and typing in Device, or going to your control panel, depending on your system and the version that you've got. Within the device manager itself, you're going to look for a section called Ports, COM, and LPT. If you don't see this, you may have to go up to View and tell it to show your hidden devices. It should display on the screen though. So go on your device manager, go down to Ports, COM, and LPT. And if you have the proper drivers, you should see your board listed as a Silicon Labs CP20 or 210X USB to UART bridge and a COM port. Now this COM port's important, so you need to take note of this and what COM number that's on. If you don't see this in your display, if it just says like communications port 1 and you don't see anything listing a USB to UART bridge, it means you don't have the appropriate drivers. There's a link in the description on this video for where you can download those drivers and get those installed. Drivers essentially are translators that allow your computer to understand how the device talks and how it identifies itself so that you can configure it and control it. This step is important before you move on. You have to have the device talking to your computer so that we can install the software. Now once they're talking, there are two different methods for installing the software. There's an easy way and a more difficult way if the easy way doesn't work for you. So I'm going to start with the easy way and then we'll get into the more difficult as a plan B, let's call it. Now to install this the easy way, we're going to go to the website that actually makes the WLED software. So before we leave the device manager, we're going to look, see that I'm on COM4, which is going to be important in the next step. And then we're going to open up either Chrome or Edge and go to install.wled.me. It works better in Chrome and Edge than it does in Firefox, has been my experience. So I'm just going to bring it up in Chrome. So this is the website. This is provided by the gentleman who makes the WLED software. It is a pretty slick install if it works for you. It works about half the time for me. So what you're going to do once you get to this site is you're going to scroll it down. You can select from the release version that you're looking for. I'm going to do the 13.3, the most recent version. I don't have the sound reactive chip to enable it to receive an audio feed and allow it to sync my display to music and all of that. So I'm just going to go with the standard for now. We'll experiment with that at a much later date. So I have 13.3 and then I'm going to hit install. And when you do that, it's going to bring up a selection screen that allows you to choose your board from the list of connected devices. This is why it was important that our board is talking to our computer before we get here. I know from my previous setting that I'm looking for COM4, which is going to be this guy right here. And then we'll hit connect. That's going to allow the website to try to talk directly to my controller. Connect. Since we're going to talk, I'm getting a message about my serial port not being ready, probably because of my COM port. So what I'm going to do is close out my device manager and then disconnect my board and try again in just a moment. My device manager is closed. I've disconnected and reconnected the board. I'll hit install again, select COM4, connect, and I'm getting the same error. Now I've run into this a few times. I don't have anything else running that's trying to talk to this, so I'm not sure exactly why it's causing this to happen occasionally. If this works for you as a process, what's going to happen is the system is going to come up and it's going to give you an installer. It'll download the software, install the flash, and then reboot your controller for you. That's the easy, happy path, exciting way for this to work. Again, it works about half the time. for me. If this doesn't work, you get an error message like this, or it sits and it just spins on installing and never actually completes, and you have to go to the more difficult method. For the difficult method, we need a piece of software that allows us to directly flash the chip. Flashing is the process of installing a new base hardware software config. So it's re-imaging the chip with all of the information that it needs to understand how to work, so that this becomes more than just a dumb circuit board. Essentially, it's going to configure all the little pieces of this to work. So we're going to get that piece of software. I'm using a piece of software called TAS Monetizer, I believe it is. I'm going to have a link for that down in the description as well, to show you how that works. And then we need to go and actually get the WLED package that we're going to flash onto the chip. And this is a little bit more difficult to do. Hopefully your unintended install worked without you having to go through this process. If that did work, you can skip over this. I'm going to show you this next piece in just a moment. So to install this the more difficult way, download the software from the link so that you have that kind of running in the background. I'll show that in a second. Then you're going to need to get the actual install package for WLED itself. To do that in your browser, we're going to essentially just remove the word install. So we're just going to www.wled.me. That's going to redirect you to a site called GitHub that allows you to directly access the code releases. Again, this is all stuff that would happen automatically for you if the install site was behaving, which mine, again, works about half the time. Once you're on this site, on the right-hand side, you're going to want to scroll down until you see a section called Releases, and this most recent release for 13.3. Click on that, and that's going to bring up the various packages that are available for that release. What you're looking for here is the specific type of board that you have, whether it's an ESP32 or an ESP8266, which is what we're dealing with. I want the 8266, so I'm going to click on that, and that's going to download that file to my computer so that I can apply it directly to my board using our software. Back on the desktop then of my computer, I have my TAS Monetizer software loaded, and I have my bin file that I've downloaded for the actual WLED software. Now what I'm going to do is put the two together. So this software allows me to connect directly on a COM port, select a bin file, and then push it. We know from previous that my COM4 is the port I'm looking for. That's where my actual board is connected. And then we're going to select the actual image that we're looking for. And this is going to be a bin file. So we're going to hit open, and then I'll go over to my desktop, and here's my bin file, my actual image that we're applying. Open again. So that file is going to be listed here in my display. And then to actually apply this to my board, we're going to hit this Tasmatize button down at the bottom. So you're going to see it go through a process here where it connects, it erases the chip, so it resets everything back to empty, and then it's going to actually write the new software to it. It's going to take it a couple minutes, so we're going to let that process complete. All right, when your process is done, you're going to get a success message, and also your chip is going to light up with this blue LED, the status light, letting you know that the software is applied and it's actually running currently on the device. So it wants us to power cycle. We're going to do that. We'll close out of the software. We're going to unplug our chip and re-plug it in. And what that's going to do is allow that software then to load, and it's going to enable the Wi-Fi chip on our actual controller. The way these work, there's a Wi-Fi hub built into it. You can actually use them as standalone, or you can connect them to your home Wi-Fi. So if you want these to just be completely isolated devices, you can just have them sit the way they are, and then to configure it, you'll actually connect to the device's Wi-Fi network, allow the software to connect, and everything will work from there. If you want this to be accessible via your home Wi-Fi network on a web browser, then we want to connect it to our home Wi-Fi, which is what I'm going to show you right now. After your device has restarted, what you're going to want to do is open up your wireless settings on your computer. It's on your laptop or PC, depending on how you're connected to your network. and you're going to look for a network called WLED_AP and connect to that network. That's going to give you an IP address and allow you to get access directly to the chip via its internal web server. To access it then, once you're connected to that Wi-Fi network, you're going to open up your browser and go to 4.3.2.1. That's going to connect you directly to this chip. That's its default setting. So that will connect to the WLED software portal. At this point you have some choices. You can use it directly as an AP, so that's using it as a standalone device, or you can connect it to your home Wi-Fi. To connect to your Wi-Fi, you're going to click Wi-Fi settings, give it the name of your SSID, so the name of your internal Wi-Fi network, and your network password, so the thing that allows all your devices to connect. And then if you wish, give it a static IP address. For me, all of my independent devices are IP'd statically, meaning that the IP address doesn't change. That way I know what number to go to if I want to control the peaks versus the roofline on my house. So I'm going to fill in all of that information. You don't need to see that. The next thing you're going to want then after we do that is to give it a name. If you have your MDNS running inside your network, this will give you something you can just type into your browser. So if you forget the IP address, you can go to WLED004.local and it will connect into that. You can also give it a SSID and control a few things like that. So for us, because I want to connect to my Wi-Fi network, I'll put in my Wi-Fi network here. I'm going to put in my network password. I'm going to fill out my static IP info. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and hit save and connect. That's going to cause the device to reboot, reconnect onto my Wi-Fi network. At that point, I will connect my computer back to the Wi-Fi network and can then directly access the device via the IP address that I give it. All right, I'm back on my local Wi-Fi. I'm ready to connect to my device. Now, I chose to give it a static IP address, so I know how to connect to this. If you're using DHCP, you're going to have to look at your gateway and see what address got assigned to it so that you can figure out how to connect. If you're using the app on your phone, the WLED app has a discovery tool that will allow it to look for instances of WLED running on your network. It's a great way to find your IP address that way as well. Because I know what I'm looking for, I'm just going to type that into my browser and we'll get this interface. This is the default status of the WLED software when it's turned on. So it comes up by default enabled, meaning it's powered on. So if I had an LED strip connected to my controller, it would be lit up at this point. But it's not initially configured. It's in its default settings. So for most of you, you're going to have to go tell it a little bit of information about your setup before the software is going to really work for you. To do that, you're going to go up to Config at the top and go to LED Preferences. Now under LED Preferences, we can set the initial configuration of the lights that are connected to the controller so it knows how to talk properly. So I'm going to scroll down, and the first thing you're going to want to do is set your LED voltage. 5 volt is your default. If you are running a 12 volt system like I am, you need to switch that so that it understands how you're talking. So I'm going to switch to my 12 volt 30 milliamp and then scroll down. And now we've got the option for what type of lights are attached, what type of strip or string, and then what is the color order and how long is it. This is letting the device know how to signal to it. So I happen to be using a WS2811, so I can leave it set with this. But the default color order for me is wrong. So GRB by default green, red, blue is the color order that the software anticipates. A lot of LED strips and strings work that way. The WS2811 does not. The way you can tell that is the initial color profile that sets up when this thing turns on is orange. So you should see your strip lit up in bright orange. If it's not lit up in orange, it means your color order is wrong. So we go here, click on the drop, and then switch it to the one that's going to work for you. For my particular strips, just the ones that I have, that's BRG, so blue, red, green. But honestly, you can just switch between these, go down to the bottom and hit save. And when you do that, it's going to switch the color immediately. So once you're seeing a bright orange, you'll know that you're set correctly. So I'm going to set that. Next step then is the length. The length is wanting to know essentially how long the strip is. Now on a WS2811, the way that these are built, each set of 3 lights counts as a single logical bulb. So this is a 300 light strip, but since each 3 counts as 1, this would count as 100. Now you're going to see this when you actually look at the strip. If you were to like switch the color to blue and you don't have this set correctly, you'll see a portion of the strip light up in blue and the rest will just stay orange or go white because it doesn't know how to talk to it. So for a single strip 12 volt WS2811, where you're doing your 3 to 1, the setting for that is going to be to change this length to 100 logical bulbs. And then we're going to go to the very bottom and we're going to save that. That's going to apply those settings. The lights will immediately flash and then they're going to show properly connected for us. The last step then before you can start experimenting with your setup is to actually physically connect this to your controller. Now, as I talked about in the other videos in this series, I'm using a 12 volt setup. This is a 5 volt chip, so there's a power supply concern that I need to deal with that I talk about a little bit in the basics video, so refer to that. I will tell you from a pinout standpoint, on this board there is a data pin called D4, it's on the side here, and another one that's ground. Those are the 2 you're interested in for this, and you're going to connect those into your strip. The D4 connection is going to go to the green wire, that's your middle wire, your data wire in the strip. The ground is going to go to the white, and then your power is going to go to the red essentially. You also need to make sure that you're on a common ground between your power supply and your strip. If you're curious about that, watch the basics video. I go into that in detail. As soon as you have those connected, however, you should be able to start experimenting, playing with colors, working with patterns, and seeing how your software works. That's going to wrap us up for today. If everything went well, you should have a functioning light strip. I'm going to be doing additional videos talking about specific settings in this software and some of the patterns that I use with my display over the next several days. But this being the end of a DIY dad video, I do owe you a dad joke. So, what type of music do they play in Santa's workshop? Rap. Right, remember with any DIY project, the most important step is just to do it. No one's going to see the flaws unless you point them out to them. Have a safe and wonderful holiday season. Catch you on the next video. Take care.